Hello and welcome to the Wonder and Wild podcast. This is episode 3, why time in the garden supports children's learning. Today, I want to talk about something very simple, but incredibly important when it comes to children's learning. It's something we often overlook because it feels ordinary, familiar, and almost too obvious to even matter. Time in the garden. Not as a break from learning, not as something extra, but as one of the most supportive learning environments children can experience. I've seen this over and over again in classrooms, in homeschooling, and clearly in my very own home. And the more time I spend teaching children, the more convinced I am that learning does not begin with curriculum. It begins with regulation. One of the biggest reasons the garden supports learning so well is because it meets the needs of the whole body first. So many challenges we see around focus, engagement, and behaviour are not actually about a children's ability to learn. They're about a body that feels tense, restricted, overstimulated, or simply unsupported. In the garden, children move in ways that are natural and functional. They bend down, they dig, they lift, they carry, they pour water, they walk from place to place. Their hands are active, like mine always are. Their feet are grounded, and their senses are engaged in meaningful ways. This kind of movement supports strength, coordination, and also body awareness. But it also supports regulation. And for some children, the shift is noticeable almost immediately. When the body settles, the brain becomes far more available for learning. This is why children who struggle to focus indoors will often surprise us when learning moves outside. Fresh air and the sunlight play an important role here as well. Outdoor environments offer space, natural light, and freedom of movement. These elements quietly support mood, attention, and emotional regulation. Many children breathe more deeply outside and move with less tension. What can look like resistance, restlessness, or disengagement indoors often softens when children are given room to move and space to be. The garden doesn't demand anything of them, and because of that, children often show up more willingly. Another powerful aspect of the garden is pace. Gardens operate on a timeline that cannot be rushed, and that is their value. Children plant seeds, water them, and then wait. Growth happens gradually. Not everything works, not everything grows. Through this process, children learn patience, responsibility, and persistence. They also develop a real understanding of cause and effect. If something is watered, it grows. If it isn't, it doesn't. These lessons are absorbed through experience rather than explanation. There is an analogy I return to often when teaching my own children. I regularly remind them that learning works just like the seeds we plant in the garden. We can't always see what's happening straight away, but growth is still occurring beneath the surface. Brain pathways are forming. Understanding is building quietly over time. In a generation that is used to quick results, the garden teaches us that real learning takes time, and that time itself is not the problem, it's part of the process. Gardening also helps children understand that food is meaningful and understand it in a practical way. When children grow and pick food themselves, food becomes connected to effort, care, and time. It no longer feels abstract or disconnected from daily life. This often leads to a greater openness around eating food and a more natural interest in fresh food. Quite often, my own daughter claims all the food in the garden before it even makes it into the kitchen. Children are far more likely to eat what they've grown themselves, not because they're told to, but because they feel ownership and pride in the process. One of the things I love most about the garden is how naturally learning is embedded. Children count seeds as they plant them. They water each plant for a set amount of time. They compare sizes, notice changes, and describe what they see, smell, and feel. Language develops as they use descriptive words for colour, texture, and shape. Numeracy appears through real tasks rather than worksheets. None of this needs to be labelled as a lesson. Children are learning because they're engaged in something meaningful. The garden also offers space for creativity. Children arrange flowers, design garden beds, decide where plants should go, and experiment with colour and layout. There is not a single right answer, which supports flexible thinking, problem solving, and confidence. Children learn to try, adjust, and try again. These skills matter far more beyond the garden. Time in the garden also introduces children to ecosystems and nature in a very tangible way. They notice insects, bees, worms, birds and butterflies. Through observation, they begin to understand pollination, life cycles, and how living things rely on one another. At the moment, my very own children are learning a very real lesson about this. Caterpillars can eat almost everything, and sometimes entire crops are lost. While they can feel frustrating, it's actually a powerful illustration of life. Not everything succeeds straight away, and sometimes effort does not lead to the outcome we hope for, and that's okay. The garden teaches resilience in a way that feels natural and honest. It's also important to say that none of this requires a large backyard. Garden learning can happen in pots on a balcony, herbs on a windowsill, a vertical garden, or a community garden space. Children don't need scale, they need access. The learning comes from tending, noticing, and returning regularly. Time outside is not separate from learning, it is learning. Many children return indoors calmer and more settled, and more capable of engaging their body once this learning outside has happened. And this understanding shapes how learning is designed at Wonder and Wild. Across grades, garden and outdoor learning sit alongside rich, structured academics. Nature time is not treated as a break from learning, but as something that supports it. This balance allows children to learn deeply whilst still being children. If learning ever feels harder than it needs to be, sometimes the most helpful question isn't what should we add, it's where could this learning happen instead? Often the garden is already the answer. Thank you so much for joining me in today's podcast. I hope that your family enjoys some time in the garden this week. I will see you in the next one. Bye. The observations shared in this episode are not medical, therapeutic or scientific claims. They're drawn from years of lived experience working with children, homeschooling and spending time outside in the garden. Children respond differently to different environments, and families should always make choices that best suit their own children and circumstances.